Thank you.
So, good morning, relatives. I first off want to thank the Naha Ilihi Fund for inviting Movement Rights and to share what we know about all this beautiful work happening to protect the sacred system of life. My name is Penny Opal Plant, and I am Yaqui and Choctaw and Cherokee. None of my family has ever lived on a reservation. I'm zooming in from the Mojave Desert on Agua Caliente Cahuilla territory. Um, I'm one of the co-founders of Movement Rights and a grandmother, auntie, mom, all of that good stuff that us older women get to be when we've lived a good life. And we're going to start in just a moment with Casey Camp Hornet giving us a opening prayer. And I want to tell you a little bit about Casey. If you don't already know her, you're really in for a treat. Casey is a Ponca elder and matriarch, head of the Padata Women's Society, a signatory on the Indigenous Women of the Americas Defending Mother Earth Treaty, as am I, and has been to numerous climate summits all over the world, and was one of the mothers that were standing alongside the warriors during the early days of the American Indian movement. And I could talk on and on about Casey. I hope you all know her and have met her before, but if you haven't, you're gonna be glad that you did. And my other partner in Movement Rights is Shannon Biggs, and we've been doing this work for well over, maybe 14 years now. So when we first started working on movement rights, on rights of nature, really it wasn't even a thing. And Shannon actually got her master's degree in empire building at the London School of Economics because she really wanted to understand what went wrong in the world. And so she's one of the smartest people I know. She's written chapters on many different books on protecting and defending the sacred system of life.
My name is Shannon Biggs. Penny so graciously introduced me. I always sound great out of Penny's mouth, so that's so I'm never sure whether I'm like, oh, I have something to live up to, or but thank you so much for to everybody who is here and who arranged for this introduction to our work, and the opportunity that lies before us to share this journey together. I want to feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat if you haven't already. And I'll do this, we'll do the same. And as you have questions, feel free to please put them in the chat when we get to the, after our brief presentation or chat. We're not using any high levels of technology today, just communicating a little bit about what rights of nature is, a really brief overview. I'll do that, and then we'll move forward also with a little bit of the history of the rights of nature, and the indigenous underpinnings really that bind this work together, and then a little bit about the opportunity that lies before us of working together over the months ahead for those who are interested in doing that. And I see people introducing themselves in the chat. So hello, everyone. So rights of nature, just as a really brief overview, a lot of people see it as a legal tool, and it is. It is a legal tool. The current law sees nature itself and the ecosystems that sustain life as human-owned property, which means that it can be destroyed for profit, and it is not considered a rights-bearing entity, even though the concept of rights is a Western and legal concept. But it really, again, is, rights they come by virtue of being born. And so if we as humans have rights, they come from Mother Earth herself. And so the words rights of nature really is a legal tool, is a bridge for where we want to go to shift our relationship in the mainstream culture and in law as one of nature as being outside of ourselves and something that humans can own and profit from. And it's really hard to imagine how under that legal structure we could ever protect nature or protect ourselves. As Casey says, we are not humans protecting nature, we are nature protecting itself. And movement rights, our mission really is to align human laws with the laws of the natural world, which is to rebalance that in politics, in law, and in culture. How are we going to make this great shift? And rights of nature as a legal tool recognizes nature or ecosystems as rights-bearing entities, which means they wouldn't be considered property, which means we could protect Mother Earth and life in a very different way, and in a way that is really based and rooted in Indigenous understandings of our relationship with all life. And since Penny and I started using this, working with others using this word rights of nature, 23 countries, actually 24 now, because Chile passed their constitution this week, recognizing the rights of nature in their constitution. So 24 countries in just over a decade have recognized legal rights for nature, which gives it standing in a court of law on its own. An ecosystem could sue a corporation for damages and also to speak for itself. And there are lots of ways that we can talk about what does that look like, but we hear Mother Earth speaking. And this really provides an opportunity in law for ecosystems to have a different way of protecting the earth, of protecting the air, the soil, and all of the living beings. So from a legal standpoint, that is what rights of nature is, how it's understood. But rights of nature is really a lot more than a legal shift, it's a culture shift. And that culture shift is the biggest part of the work that that needs to be done. As with any movement for rights, whether it's around whether it's slavery and recognizing stolen peoples as rights-bearing entities in law, it's really just shifting our entire relationship with how we see the sources of life that protect us every single day, that we are just one part of that. And how do we move forward from that place? That's the shift. And that is also why Indigenous-led rights of nature is the most powerful force for the shift, because it is Indigenous people. It's no coincidence that 80% of the world's biodiversity is in Indigenous hands, is protected by Indigenous wisdom, ancient ancestral knowledge that guides this work and guides the rights of nature to be more than just a legal tool, to be really the shift of how we change our relationship with nature. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Penny to talk a little bit about the history of rights of nature and that global shift. Then we'll talk a little bit about Casey and her work with the Ponca Nation as the first tribe in the US to recognize the rights of nature on tribal land. So Penny, thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. So I want to start with just talking about the bridge between the words rights of nature, rights of Mother Earth, and original instructions of Indigenous people. So they're all connected to me. And rights of, because of the time that we live in, because we're in purification times and things are changing very, very rapidly as Mother Earth works to rebalance herself from the harms of what our human family has done. The rights of nature words are words for everyone in the world. The rights of Mother Earth words came from Indigenous people. And of course, the roots of the rights of Mother Earth go directly into the original instructions of Indigenous people that tell us how to be in balance and harmony within the sacred system of life with all of her beauty, and not to disturb or disrupt or damage what keeps us all alive, including our non-human relatives. And so the history of the rights of nature movement has its beginnings at the World's People Conference on Climate Change and the Rights of Mother Earth in Cochabamba, Bolivia, in April of 2010. So imagine, maybe some of you were there, I wasn't, but imagine 30,000 people, mostly Indigenous people, some of whom walked there for hundreds of miles to have a voice at this People's Climate Conference, to be able to speak to what was happening in their territories and to their people and to the system of life where they live. And I think it was towards the end of this amazing conference, the people created a declaration on the rights of Mother Earth. And if you haven't looked at this declaration, it is so powerful. I look at it many times during the year because it points to the way forward of how we can share what we know as Indigenous people, how we can integrate what we know with these Western laws that we have to use right now into a way forward that is safe for generations to come. And it starts out with, we the peoples and nations of Earth, considering that we are all part of Mother Earth, an indivisible living community of interrelated and interdependent beings with a common destiny, gratefully acknowledge that Mother Earth is the source of all life, nourishment, and learning, and provides everything that we need to live well. And then it goes on into explaining what these harms are and where they came from: capitalism, the contamination, degradation, and destruction of Mother Earth. And then it goes into our relationship with her and her sacred system of life. So I would encourage you to take a look at that and dive deeply into it, and allow it to sink in under your skin and be part of who you are as a person. And so since then, like, there have been so many countries that have passed these rights of nature laws, as Shannon spoke to, and there some of the iwis, the tribes in New Zealand which have passed these types of, they're not actually laws there, they were agreements with the Crown government. They look at it as a way to move forward into asserting sovereignty. So I just want to plant that little seed, and then bring Casey in to talk about what this amazing work that's been done in the Ponca Nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Penny and Shannon. And every time I hear everything, I'm taking notes because it keeps on stirring things within me. First of all, I am a mama and auntie, a grandma and a great grandma, a sister, a daughter, a descendant of those that made a way for me. And for those that I talked about down to my great grandchildren, as what was called an activist, and I think that's gotten very overused. But during my younger days, my brother Carter Camp was a leader in the American Indian movement. And many of our relatives had come from being migrant farm workers and everything that has to do with relocation and just surviving. And from that time, from springing from that time of civil rights movements and the American Indian movement, the Red Power movement, the transition into environmentalism, and that's what it's called, I guess, this responsibility and honor we have to serve our Mother Earth. There was a movement that helped us to understand how important that word sovereignty that she just mentioned was. As a young mother, my job as a sovereign human being was to take care of my children, and that's what I did. And I did all of the laundry and the diaper changing and kid watching for all of my brothers and sisters that were also out in the streets at that time doing the civil society work that the American Indian movement did. From that, and moving into this environmentalism in the late 1980s, we were always looking for ways to be able to make the federal government be responsible for this trust responsibility that they have to the indigenous nations, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. All of the systems that were put in place to annihilate us have actually become the cushions that we can use to enhance our own sovereignty. So when the Department of Energy was pushing bringing solid waste, municipal solid waste into our territory, or the uranium, or any number of the stressors that were killers of Mother Earth, consequently us, petroleum industries in the 1980s, without our permission, we began to search for ways to protect life, period, just life. And some of those came about through the meetings that we talk about now, the meeting in Cochabamba. Prior to that, the meetings with other indigenous nations on how they needed help to, like the Big Mountain people were looking for prayers out there because of what was happening with the uranium mining and the tailings and all of the things, the coal generated power plants. Fast forward to this particular time that we're in right now, and I was asked to run for council. It had not been part of my, no, I had never intended to. It wasn't something that I aspired to, but I could see its value. And if you're asked by your elders, which is funny because I'm one of them, but if you're asked by your elders, then you do comply. And so I did run for council. I did get on council. And as soon as I got on there, we started pushing those boundaries, just like Rights of Nature pushes the boundaries of how society sees itself within the structure of all of the living relations. And the Pawnee had recently passed a moratorium on fracking, and we expanded that. We did a moratorium on fracking and injection wells as they had. They're our neighbors. And we had all experienced 10,000 earthquakes here in Oklahoma as a result of the fracking and injection wells, man-made earthquakes. And we also added the dewatering process, which is, of course, defiling the sacred waters of life. We did a moratorium and an actual resolution to stop KXL from coming through. And then after working with Penny and Shannon for a number of years and learning their perspective on rights of nature, because uh, my generation, my family's dedication to understanding what the laws are worried me in the beginning. I always have referred to my brother Carter's perspective on Freedom of Religion Act. Theoretically, that means that we're able to practice our indigenous ways, our original ways. And for us, that's the Sundance. And yet here in Oklahoma, that practice is still outlawed. You can't, you can Sundance, but there's laws around what you can and can't do with that. And so when I heard rights of nature and creating the laws around it initially, which would have been around what was that, 2010, 2011, I thought that perhaps creating a law would also be one of those that would be a double-edged thing. Brother Carter always said it, if we have true religious freedom, why do they have to have a law around it? If this nation, if the United States is founded on religious freedom, why does there have to be one for Native Americans? It's because they want to govern us. So I had to begin to look at this rights of nature thing from that perspective and really examine how it could be helpful to my people if we indeed recognize all living things as our relatives, if we indeed recognize ourselves as human beings as part of a sacred circle of life and not separate from. And it took that totality of the understanding of the English language and of sovereignty and of what rights of nature could do in the protection of the ones that swim in the rivers around us, the ones that grow in the fields, those that they call wilderness and wild animals. What could it do for them? And what can it even do for our neighbors? You know, we have rancher and farmers around us that are growing food, and that goes into the stores, and we all consume that, you know. That took me to a place of understanding. By that time, we had had several rights of nature forums here at home, InterTribal rights of nature forums, community meetings. The people talked to me at home about how they saw this and what it could be in terms of stopping ConocoPhillips from polluting our sacred territory any more than it already has, because we're a frontline community here. And our tribe, in examining that, didn't take the step of moving it into our Constitution yet because of all of the nonsense that you all understand with the IRA governments, but instead looked at it as a statute. How can we hold them responsible legally for doing the things that they do? And these are still untested. We still haven't really understood exactly the process that we take, but we're getting closer to understanding that. And this statute takes them not into state or federal court, but into the Ponca court and holds them responsible for the damage that they might potentially do or have done. Now, again, the process is still in the making, and there's more expansion that we're doing right now. We have to build the codes. There's a whole thing, but using what is already in there, our inherent sovereignty, our inherent belief system, our inherent understanding of our relationships within this thing that they call life. This thing that we call walking the road on Mother Earth, even to the point of helping to understand what happens when you do carbon trading, because that wasn't clear to me either. How do we protect the sky itself from all of the carbon going up there? What about climate? What about our traditional territories? And so those are things that are also built into our rights of nature statute, and we're still expanding. So that's a bit, and it was a large bit. So if you need me to break any of that down, I think Shannon said we're putting the questions in the Q&A. Is that correct? Okay. All right. I'll stop there and look forward to visiting more.
Casey, thank you for that. And I just want to ask you if you could just spend a couple of minutes just talking about iron forums as a whole. This is a version of that we're looking at doing over time, which is exciting. So maybe you could just share a little bit about the history of our iron forums.
It's like anything else, a natural evolving thing. You know, I'm going to throw in a lot of Ponca things. All of you guys are Indigenous, so you know this is going to happen. Just be prepared. I'm going to use it for instance. My mother's brother is Gus McDonald, and he was the originator of the fancy dance. That's our biggie. I mean, we're so proud of him to have started a whole genre. And believe me, there's a lot of backstory that I'm not going into now. But to use that as an example, that fancy dance has spread throughout the United States, and a lot of people now take part in that. And we felt that building with the rights of nature. I think the first time that we had a good community meeting around rights of nature and decided to call it the NIF Rights of Nature Forum, there were probably a dozen different tribes of activists and tribal leaders and community people that just wanted to learn more. And that has continued. I think that would have been probably 2015, if I'm correct. And I don't think time is all that relevant myself, but there was a time that began, and it has continued. And coming into the COVID time, I learned how to Zoom. I didn't really learn how. My son pressed all the buttons and magic happened, but we took those online and began to partner with many other people, Indigenous people, that understood within their territory how it could work for them. Many are from the desert, some are from the mountains, some are from the coast, as you all are. And each one of those have particular instructions, original instructions from Mother Earth and Wakanda, our Great Spirit, Creator, of how to live within the system that they are placed in. You know, I don't have much snow here, so my understanding is different than those that live in the snow and different than those that live in the desert. So the tailoring has to come from what the earth is telling you, what the sky is telling you, what the perspective of the living things around you need for their survival. And that's what these iron forums are. They're for all the different tribes to come together. We have commonalities, but we also live in different places where we were put, and how we adjust ourselves to live there in a kind and interactive way is what we're all looking for at this time, and how to build a structure that will find a way to protect the ones that give us life as human beings. And that may or may not be the answer, Shannon, but that's as close as I'm getting.
So you always have that the answer. Yes, that's the answer. Just to say before we turn it over to Sean for Q&A, part of our work, the InterTribal Rights of Nature Forum, is iron. So that's where iron comes from, is also a way to examine how this fits, you know, with each, you know, as Casey said, for the original instructions for everyone's territories and communities. It's also to look at it from a perspective of this work is also about strengthening Indigenous sovereignty. It's about their connections with land back movement. Casey, for example, the rights of nature law statute that they passed includes their not just their current recognized lands, but their ancestral homelands that were unceded. So this is also part of making the connection with that movement. And just transition, because it isn't just about what we're saying no to, it's about what we're saying yes to, and what does that look like. So there's a lot in these, in these words, rights of nature, that can be viewed from, or rights of Mother Earth can be viewed from many different perspectives, and work that Indigenous people are already carrying out on behalf of Mother Earth. So it's a place where we can explore how all of those pieces fit together. And Penny, do you have anything else to say before I turn it over to Sean and open it up for questions? Okay, Sean, we'll just hand it over to you. And if people have put questions in the chat, or if you imagine questions that folks might have, we'll be happy to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for all your wisdom in this work, and just for doing this important work. And I have not seen any questions in the chat. So if folks do have questions, you can raise your hand, and we'll call on you. Don't be shy.
If not, we can always throw up questions that were most often asked in Iron forums.
That sounds great. Thank you.
But first, I would like to explain my giant coffee cup. It's really this big.
Yes, that's how much it takes for Penny to be perky. That's how much coffee it takes each day. So, so we're grateful to caffeine and coffee here every day. So one of the questions that we're most often asked is the question around rights versus responsibilities, and that rights are this Western legal words, and that Indigenous and original instructions often speak to our responsibilities. So I'll just put that question out for Penny and Casey.
Well, I think that we've probably all seen and heard people talk about the difference between rights and responsibilities. I mean, in the traditional cultures that I know of, there was never any jails. There was never, any kind of laws. There were ways that people were raised and brought up, and the energy and the thought forms and the culture of our individual communities directed everyone in a certain way to be. And of course, there were people that did the wrong thing, because we're all just human beings. But and I'm sure that there were, banishments and things for people that were went over the top of doing something that wasn't acceptable within the group of folks. But there wasn't anything like what the Europeans brought here. And so that's just one example of the difference between rights and responsibilities. Like when those folks arrived, they arrived with a very punitive, rigid way of living in the world that just like was so crushing for all of us. And now we find ourselves in this place where we have to create these bridges, because it is one Mother Earth, one air, one water, one living system of life. And so I think that a lot of these words that we use, I really do consider them bridge words. Like, how do we get from where we are right now to where we know we need to be in order for our great grandchildren to be safe and secure and live in a sustainable world that is supportive of life, because that's all really at risk right now. And so I just will reiterate that doing this work in particular, I mean, I've been working on protecting and defending the sacred system of life for over 40 years. And this work around the rights of Mother Earth, the rights of nature, is, to me, the strongest, fastest growing movement that I've ever been involved in my entire life of doing this type of work. And it can cut through all of the Western thought forms, these European thought forms that we've had to burden us for hundreds and hundreds of years. And it's a way of not only asserting sovereignty, but it's also a way of asserting a way of being in the world that could potentially be very inspiring to non-Indigenous people, because we all are going to have to get there together at some point. And that's why I encourage everyone to read that Declaration on the Rights of Mother Earth. So I'll just stop right there. Thanks.
I see Casey has a question for the group in the chat, but I'll just add briefly, Penny, when you were talking, it reminded me of when we were in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and visiting with our Maori relatives there. And they, you know, they passed the Wanganui iwi or tribe, the settlement that the river is their ancestor, their spiritual ancestor. And as long as it was property under the crown government, it was an ancestor, a relative in chains. They have a saying, I am the river and the river is me, from the mountain to the sea. And so their culture was also in chains. So part of this was about recognizing the first river to own itself, no longer property, not even property of the, of the iwi, the original peoples of that area. And they understood also that in addition to, that part of this was not just, they knew who the river was to them. They didn't need a piece of paper to tell them about their relationship, but they also said it was a powerful reminder to the Pakeha, or the settler colonial population, of that relationship. And that this was also part of, as Penny said, we all need to be connecting and doing this work together. And it was also as much for them as it was for the tribe itself. And I think about that a lot, about, that there are many reasons to do this work and ways to do it. And Casey has a question in the chat, which my question is, she says, do any of you have any idea of what bear has to do with today's gathering? So the question is for those those of us that are here today.
Okay, Casey, I'll spill it. Yes, oftentimes over the years when Naa'ilihi has making bold moves, bear will come. We gifted bear energy. We were giving, I'll show you some of my bears that people come gift us bears, and they just show up. And it's always when we are making bold moves. So that could be it. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That means a great deal to me, because it didn't feel like it was mine. And I was thinking, if somebody doesn't tell me something, I'm going to have to go sit down by my sweat forever and try to understand this, because but man, that means a lot to me. It really does. I can't express how grateful I am for that knowledge. and how blessed I feel that Bear would be present at this time. Thank you. That's it. I'm done. See y'all sometime. Oh man.
Joni, can I invite you to share a few words?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Joni Crines. I'm the Grants Program Officer for Na'ilahi Fund. I participated in helping to write this grant. I will be the one who collects the applications, and I'm here to assist. My name and phone number is everywhere, so any of you applicants, please call if you run into any stumbling blocks. At Na'ilahi Fund, we fully embrace the trust-based philanthropy, so we work really hard to make a simple application process and also reporting process as well. So we take up the burden of completing the difficult and often laborious reports to our funders, but we don't request that from you. We leave a wide open space for our people to talk about their work. So there's plenty of spots for 100 words or 300 words for you to explain your project and talk about your dreams. All the big questions that we really want to hear from you is who'll be leading this project. What are the names and roles of the people who will be part of your Rights of Nature project? What are you trying to protect, and what was the pollution source? Can you please explain the history of your Rights of Nature work to date? And that one in particular, we're interested in people that, as well, that, you're beginners, that, all of a sudden this has come to you and it's important, and you want to lead this work. So anyway, I just want to encourage people that, you don't need to be established. If this is just your calling now, please join us. What inspired you to do this Rights of Nature work, and what is drawing you to this work? What are you trying to achieve? You've been in it for a bit. What are the obstacles that do you see that's standing in your way? Again, if you're brand new, you probably envision some obstacles, but please talk to us and tell us what you're looking to do. This grant has a cohort requirement to it, so everybody here will be working together with the grantees. We will award 5 groups or 5 individuals, 5 people that are leading this Rights of Nature work, award amounts of $20,000. There will be a bi-monthly Zoom online series from June 2022 to February 2023. And it's to facilitate the advancement of the community-led projects to advance the Rights of Nature strategies. You can find, I think Sean put the link several times in the chat, but it's, you can access the grant and the application on our website, which is www.naa'ilihifund.org. I wish you the best of luck. The grant is open for 6 weeks. It will close on Thursday, May 12th at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I would encourage people to apply early, and then I can assist. My job is to help our people submit strong applications. So if they're done ahead of time, I can look through them and reach out and make suggestions. Our goal is for our people to succeed. However, if everybody applies the last 2 days and there's 30 applications, I'm less likely to be able to reach y'all and get whatever additional information, or when there's too many at the same time. So anyway, I wish you the best of luck, and thank you everybody here for helping further this work. Nimuzoi, all my relations.
Thank you so much, Joni, and thanks for all the support you give our grantees. And is there anything else, Shannon, Casey, or Penny, before we wrap up? And as a reminder, this recording will be on our website. So for folks who want to share it out or you want to tell anyone, it'll be there. I'm not sure. Jill's probably going to help facilitate that. So hopefully in the next few days. Yes, Casey.
We also are structuring a rights of nature, an Indigenous Council for the Global Alliance of the Rights of Nature. So if anybody wants to participate in that, that is a global group of people that are beginning to meet on a monthly basis and just discuss, again, it's all territorial, having to do with where our place is on Mother Earth and how we can build this big net of love and protection around here. And I just wanted to tell Joni, thanks for being our bear. I see you as one of those fierce protectors and loving nurturers. So appreciate that. And thank you all. Thank you all. I feel enriched today.
Thank you so much, Casey.